when I learned this piece when I was a college student. I was playing it in college about like on a modern piano because the keys are deeper. You probably play it well.
We have been married almost 50 years. We met because my landlady used to teach school in the same school with my wife. Without going into all the details, at one point she asked if I was interested in young women. And,
she asked me if I was interested in young men. I thought it was a very funny question.
And anyway...
she gave him my telephone number.
And so that was the beginning, and we got married about 6 months later. And
he asked me to marry him about, what was it, after 4 days?
She was a very good matchmaker. And we both were involved in music. In my case, actually, what I was professionally trained to be was an historian of East Asia and Chinese philosophy. And actually that's come around in a circle. Where Western classical music seems to be making its last stand is in East Asia. And so I try to keep my Chinese up, but it's gotten horribly rusty over the years. So anyway, and eventually I got out of academia.
Wait a minute, while you were still in academia, you were building harpsichords.
Yeah,
that's why she introduced us.
Yes, by which I don't mean putting kits together. In other words, I was working the way a pro does with measurements and drawings of antique instruments and
cleaning the wood by hand.
And taking piles of wood and converting it into harpsichords. The treble up here sounds well. Crystal chandelier sounds, and in the bass it's Anyway, I got out of academia, and I realized that people really didn't know that much about the kinds of pianos that composers had actually used and how different they were from the modern ones. And then I realized there were a lot of old pianos that weren't horribly expensive, and there was lots of written material. And finally, reissues of recordings, because if you think of ordinary human longevity, somebody born in, shall we say, 1860 or so, could live long enough to make lots of electronic process recordings. So you can't hear Franz Liszt, but you can hear Franz Liszt pupils and Clara Schumann pupils and people who studied with Brahms and so on and so forth. And no, they don't play the way most people do today. And the instruments were quite different. And also one thing, well, a Japanese visitor called it the McDonaldization of everything. We did have one guest who said she thought she had a friend who lived where there was no nearby McDonald's, but that was in a small town in northwest India, but every place else. And in the past, why things varied from one city to another, and also we're used to standardized education. Now, one of Franz Liszt's approach was if he found somebody who came to him for study and he decided the person was hopelessly untalented and a waste of time, he told them to go to a conservatory, because the important people didn't. He never had he didn't have a music degree in his life. Neither did Beethoven.
They studied with masters.
They, yeah,
Learned their,
yeah, no,
like
it
apprenticeship.
It was basically apprenticeship system. And this was true of a lot of other things. Engineering, for example. You didn't expect a university graduate to be any good at all if you wanted to do something useful. Build a steamship? God, no. You went to somebody who worked in a shipyard and somebody who knew about steam engines. And this does change the way people look at things, and it means they are perhaps less literal, less hooked on things in books. We really got started seriously in a big way in 1975, and we've been at it ever since.
We were married in 1972, and at first we just had his harpsichord that he had built and my Steinway baby grand. And we realized at some point that it would cost less over the long haul, or be more satisfactory over the long haul, if we bought antique furniture and renovated things that were slightly used looking. Because he had woodworking skills, we were able to get things that weren't in absolutely perfect condition, and he could fix them up. And then if we wanted to upgrade, we could get something even better. So we were shopping for our furniture for our new household in antique shops rather than going to get new furniture that would devalue as soon as we got it out of the shop.
The antiques ended up doing that too, but I won't go into that.
But we began collecting antiques at a particularly good shop in Ohio, which is where he was teaching. And we found a small piano there from the 1790s from Dublin, Ireland, which he put in playing condition. And we began to realize how the difference between that little piano and my Steinway for playing music of Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven period. It was just a tremendous difference in sound quality and sound, the size of the sound. And we thought, well, pianos did not obviously make the jump between 1790 and 1920, which was when my piano was made. There must have been many steps in between. And because we both are extremely curious and like to know more, we decided we'd better find out what came between. And you can see the results here.
My father was an engineer, and it meant that I think my engineering aptitude fizzled out maybe in the 1910s. He lived to a few weeks short of 96, so.
My father was he was hired to be publicity agent, press agent for the Boston Pops and the Esplanade. So he would take us to work with him. So this is how I have done publicity for our piano concerts too, and for this piano center. And as you'll see, we've gotten magazine stories and newspaper stories out of this. Turkish music magazine, an interview with Patricia and Michael Frederick. Here is the way that it came out. They have the Turkish on one side of the page and the English on the other side of the page.
Yeah, oh, do we have the British magazine here?
Yep, right here. This Musical Opinion is the oldest classical music magazine in England. And the same author got them to print the same article. So here it is again. And he moved to London
And he also, among serious Chinese pianists, he was sort of the god of Chinese piano playing.
Article from our website, my husband's article from our website, translated into Chinese. See, it has the English subtitle here, Inspecting the Piano History from Another Point of View. My mother had been hired by my father to be staff artist for the Boston Symphony. She was drawing live sketches of composers and conductors and soloists and musicians in the symphony. When I was a year old, the only place in the living room to put my baby pen was right in front of the piano keyboard. And when I was a year old, my father wrote a letter to his sister saying, "The baby pulls herself up by the bars of her playpen, holds onto the railing, and plays one note and listens to it. Plays another note and listens to it." So by the time I was, I think, probably 2.5, I was picking out tunes. And my mother, whose mother had been a kindergarten teacher and sang with her children a lot, my mother knew a lot of songs, and she would sing to me a lot. So pretty soon I would be singing with my mother, and sometimes we would sing two-part harmony. Well, my mother, as staff artist, besides doing sketches, quick line sketches, she was also a photographer. And she took pictures of the Esplanade Shell while it was under construction for the Metropolitan District Commission, the MDC. So they have her series of blown up black and white pictures of the shell under construction through all the stages. These pictures were for sale for, I think it was a nickel a piece, these postcards. And I walked up and down the street of our village selling postcards, 5 cents a piece.
Child exploitation.
No, I was having fun doing it. I liked selling things, and it made me feel important. My father took me to the bank where the Esplanade funds were kept, and there's a pile of small change in the picture too from the postcards. My father wrote the caption that was then printed in the Boston Globe saying, youngest sponsor of the Boston Esplanade concerts. Teaching you to play very, very fast. And by very, very fast, he was not kidding. These are all 16th notes, which means that you have, like that, be 1/4, 2/4. So all 8 of these would be equal to one of those. Now on a modern piano, because the keys go down deeper and the sound takes longer to die out, you probably want to play it no faster than maybe. Be pretty fast on a modern piano. It sounds like a finger exercise when you play it like that. Actually, the tempo is supposed to be a lot faster. It's supposed to go more like.
Erard was in business. They were an important make up until roughly the 1930s. So we have a range of Erards running from 1840 to 1928. The reason we have pianos by Erard musically is, well, Haydn had one, Beethoven had one. It was Mendelssohn's favorite make. It's what Chopin used part of the time. It's what Liszt used most of the time in his active concert career. Clara Schumann had one. Brahms used them. You're beginning to get the picture. It was Fauré's piano, Ravel's piano, and when Messiaen's piano music got its first recorded performance in the second half of the 20th century, that was on Erard too. We're beginning to notice something. We do have a Steinway here, and it's a very early one, 1866.
When we have a concert coming up, the pianist is advised to come maybe a year ahead and pick out a piano and decide what repertoire matches that piano that they would like to play with it. Sketches that she had done for the orchestra. There's a picture of my mom, as she was at the time. That is Leonard Bernstein. That is me in the chair that Kusevitsky gave me. I was looking at a book, and if you look at the picture, it's a music book. It's a Christmas carol book. I write poetry. Self-portrait back when I had glasses. Okay, here's one of my husband's favorite chair. My son, when he had just grown 3 inches a year for 3 years, and he was clumsy, and he would pour the milk beyond the glass. He didn't know where his hands were. sounds very nice for accompanying, say, English, Irish, Scottish music. So you get something like this. Well, I know where I'm going, and I know who's going with me. I know who I love, the dinners who are married, but I have stockings of silk and shoes of fine green leather, combs to buckle my hair, and a ring for every finger. For as I came through Sandgate, as I came through Sandgate, I heard a lassie sing, "We'll may the keel roll, the keel roll, the keel roll. We'll may the keel